Fair. I don't know. To me, if he comes back, that means I
I don't.
sobbed. That means I sobbed for no reason. I don't sob lightly, so you can't just
The,
rescind the tears that came out of my eyes for
well,
that.
the thing is, that was a long fall.
Hey guys, Isabel here. Welcome back to Reeled In. Today, now that the Bad Batch season 2 has officially ended, my friend Connor and I will be doing another Dyad discussion on season 2.
Long overdue.
Yeah, we planned,
We've
we
been
kept
busy.
planning. We're
Yeah,
like,
we've
let's
been
do it
talking
now.
off screen.
We're like, let's do it this week. No, I can't do it. All right, let's do it this week.
Oh, I have a paper
Busy.
due. Oh, I can't do this. I have my thesis. Spoilers, by the way, for both seasons of The Bad Batch, and a little bit, I think, for The Mandalorian season 3 up
Mhm.
until chapter 21. So just spoiler warning. You have been warned.
But here we are, finally, to talk about what, honestly, in my opinion, I would consider to be the peak of Star Wars at the moment. I enjoyed this season tremendously. That might be, did you? Like, just overall for the season, did you like it or no?
I like parts of it. Um, I I think tonally I like the first one actually a little bit better. But I mean it wasn't, bad in any way. Like I just think I prefer the first one, but this one was still like there was a lot going on. And a lot that I really like.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this one expanded upon what was kind of just mentioned in season 1. So we got a lot of like science and cloning background. And also to me, this was better in terms of like character development for most of the batch,
Hmm.
in my opinion, anyway.
Speaking of character development, how do you feel the way Crosshair was uh dealt with?
Oh, crosshair. He, to me, is I have very complicated feelings about him because he's a complicated character and I like complicated characters. And, in the beginning of the season, he's one of those characters that you just kind of dislike. And especially if you don't agree with how he thinks and acts. But I do have to say, the episode at the outpost, I think was a beautiful episode because to me, it gave me sympathy and empathy for him, which I didn't think I would be able to
Have.
do. Yeah, I didn't think I would be able to have that for him. And they're definitely, I think, setting up a redemption arc of some sort, which after thinking about it, I'm kind of okay with it. A lot of people think that his redemption arc will be Crosshair essentially not making it out of like season 3, like, doing some heroic act and then like dying. That is mostly what typical redemption arcs are, but since this is, from Dave Filoni's mind and his vast pools of creativity, and the fact that he also,
Jennifer Corbett, actually. He's the executive producer. So this is all Jennifer Corbett who,
hmm,
but she has still been part of the Bad Batch's journey since day one. So from my understanding, she's been in the writers' room, when George was still there, when they first like came up with these characters. So just to just checking you on that. But yeah, the person who is responsible, yes, is very, I think, self-aware of where she wants to take the batch.
hmm, yeah, but since Dave is the executive producer, he gets final say usually. But also
Mhm.
just highlighting the fact that he worked a little bit on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I may be guessing or hypothesizing that we might get like a Zuko sort of redemption arc where the character doesn't die, but kind of faces his own consequences and what that means for him, and sort of just kind of becoming a better person. But if that's the way they go, I need at least like a season 4 until Crosshair is like accepted,
A lot of
because
seasons.
he's got a lot of personal journey, I feel, left for him before I'll be okay with accepting that. So, but those are my opinions. What did you think about Crosshair's journey?
I kind of like where it's going. And one thing that I find interesting is that, sometimes like stories got a story. TV show's got a TV show, movie's got a movie. But like the way that I think his character has been going this season is a little bit more realistic if you think about it. Conflict had to happen in the first season, and you're led to believe that it's inhibitor chip and all that stuff, but it's actually his mentality. And I think I've said this before, like that's not completely out of pocket if you really take like a close reading of Crosshair as a character.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how he's really starting to like sit back and really take in what's going on around him, because most of this show I would say is more about just showing the transition from one era to another. And you
Mm-hmm.
have the empire, you have a fascist dictator regime
Right.
um that just comes on the rise and just starts bulldozing. So when you have somebody who thinks they understand and thinks that they agree with everything that's going on and thinks that no matter what's going on that they are safe, when you have a character like Crosshair that really sits back and realizes that that's not the case and then starts to change drastically, I just find really interesting.
Right.
So I think out of characters, I think even though we got like what was it, 2 episodes with him like actually running the show,
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a tremendous amount of development from him.
Yeah, the whole depicting the transition between the two eras is also one of the reasons why I enjoyed this show so much, because I feel like for the longest time that period was just kind of glossed over and overlooked. And, everyone, myself included, never really thought like, well, what did happen to the clones? Like we didn't think too hard about it. And so to see like the horrific, I guess, fate of the clones just kind of makes me appreciate them a little bit more. I mean, they're basically using as test subjects. They're being just, you know, offed every like left and right. So sad, but also like it shows just how horrible the Empire is.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite scenes is the mid-season where we get how and why that happened.
The
The
stormtroopers.
Yeah, the Stormtrooper initiative, and just I did not expect the Emperor to show up at the end there, and just to see the Emperor still kind of controlling both sides of the chessboard, even though there is officially like one winner. Just it makes me so angry, but it's also brilliant, and it makes me mad.
I think you texted me that when you watched it, you said, "Oh, he's so brilliant. I hate him for
Yeah,
it."
I do. I'm like, why do you
Um
have to be like this?
yeah, and I say this time and time again, and I know some people just roll their eyes, but like episodes like that and arcs like that are so like politically potent, they're extremely important. And like I
Mhm.
think about this a lot. Like you can't really tell a successful story that has to do with war and that has to do with systems changing without having politics like that.
Mhm.
So the team at Lucasfilm is able to do that with a show like The Bad Batch. It reminds me a lot of the prequels actually, because like
Right.
that's where I think the prequels are very strong, is in all of that. So like the whole idea, just the idea of having Palpatine, who is the Chancellor of the Republic,
Right.
leading the way, but also as Sidious and leading the Separatists and influencing people who are disillusioned by said republic and just
Mhm.
kind of turning them against each other. So then it works out in his favor.
Yeah, that the
That
mid
mid
season,
season was great.
it was great. And it also, now that we have the entire season, so there's a theme that I kind of recognized specifically in this mid season, and then again at the finale, that sometimes the actions of the people who are on like the same side as you can have devastating consequences. So like in the mid season, Omega and the Batch, they're trying to get this information to one of the senators so they can try and stop this, the whole like cloning prejudice. I guess I forgot the exact detail of what they're trying to stop,
It was
but
for clone rights.
yeah, yeah. And basically, with that information, Palpatine was able to rise up and kind of exploit it. And that's why the Stormtrooper Initiative
Yeah.
was possible. And then again, in the finale with Tech's death and basically all the chaos that ensued right after it was due basically to Saw Gerrera's actions, if you think about it. So, even if you all may be good guys and on the same side, not every action is gonna hit the offensive kind of thing.
Like,
So it's just something I noticed, and I was like, "That's really good. It's really painful, but it's really good."
okay, it makes sense with Saw. I'm a little confused on the first part. I'm a little confused on what you mean by both people on the same side using the same thing, but for different intentions.
I don't really have like a different intention
No.
scenario. It's just that when Omega, the batch tried so hard to do something good, but
Oh,
it
I
kind of
gotcha, I
but it
gotcha.
kind of failed. That's what I meant by
Thwarted
that.
plans.
Yeah. So since I mentioned Tech and his demise, should
Oh,
probably
brown eyes.
should probably talk about it. I was devastated. I still kind of am. Like I woke up this morning and it felt like I had lost like something important or like a best
Really?
friend or something. Yes, I
Oh
was
my
just
goodness.
like after the credits rolled, I just like stared at my computer for like 5 minutes. Just like it was horrible to me. But I think it was horrible because the season did such a good job of setting it up where you would feel some sort of way upon his death. Because at least I noticed that throughout the season, we focused a little bit more on Tech as opposed to the rest of the batch. Like he got his own kind of solo episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even if
Yeah,
it
the
was
pod racing.
yeah, in an episode that isn't really necessarily that important to the entire overall plot of the story, but still like showed his characteristics a little bit more. And the fact that he was willing to help someone who was horrible to them. Sid. Anyways,
Yeah, we'll come back to Sid
we'll come
later
back
because
to
we have
Sid.
some opinions.
I think the entire season did a good job of also setting up why his sacrifice would be believable.
And
Because
meaningful.
yeah, because in the first or second episode, he literally hobbles out on broken legs to go and save Omega,
Yeah.
and again help someone who didn't deserve to be helped. And I love the episode where we get him and Omega talking in that cave, and him kind of understanding that he has to change the way he acts and thinks a little bit for Omega to make her happier. So just that, I'm gonna get emotional just talking about it. But
Oh.
anyway, yeah.
No, I do love that episode. In the caves with
Mhm.
the Epsium. They're doing the Epsium mining. Yeah, I actually really like that. It shows that Omega is learning, but she is also, whether she means to or not, is also teaching, and
Mhm.
they're learning from her. Like we saw in the entire first season, with Hunter. I feel like we focused a lot on Hunter,
Mhm.
and that his natural instinct, he learned was parental
Yeah, to protect
and
Omega.
mhm, like aggressively. So yeah, so I think to have Omega at the center of that and be the one, have the younger Bad Batcher to teach the others like how think of things differently. Um yeah, because Tech really, like I don't love Tech as much as everybody else does. Like I just kind of I was okay with him kind of being in the background, but with the season, the fact that I think he grows a little bit more. I think you're right. I think it makes it easier just to become a little bit more attached to him and have a little bit more empathy.
And the fact that he's the one who's outwardly perceived as, being the most robotic, not having the most
Yeah.
emotional connection, and then having him be the one to have that sacrifice, I think was really impactful.
Like he was the closest thing that they had to a droid companion.
Pretty much, pretty much.
The
Uh,
Skywalkers had 3PO, the Bad
right,
Batch
right.
has
Has
Tech.
Tech. Do you think he'll come back?
I have mutuals who say no body, no death.
There, I don't know.
Um,
To me, if he comes back, That means I
I don't.
sobbed. That means I sobbed for no reason. I don't sob lightly. So you can't just rescind the tears that came out of my eyes for
Well,
that.
the thing is, that was a long fall.
Yeah,
I don't see it likely.
right. I mean, and his gun, his grapple gun, just it fell out of his reach. I think it
Yeah,
showed. So
yeah. I
yeah,
also think it would diminish his sacrifice.
I do
So
too.
it that like that's one thing that kind of drives me crazy, especially in like in franchised series, is that like beloved characters, they're more concerned about appeasing the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's fair to a degree, but at a certain point, like I said, story's got a story. Like it has to move forward. To bring him back would be diminishing, even if they tried to like clone him. So like
Mm.
that's the other thing I'm worried about with all the cloning stuff, is that like they retrieved his body, and because he was dead, they're tempted to see like, oh, can we clone a dead body?
Hmm.
Palpatine.
Yeah,
Somehow Palpatine returned.
I did notice that they were kind of, or what it seemed like they were connecting though that sequel to this with the whole cloning. Like, what does I think even the Mandalorian a little bit like what does
Mm-hmm.
the Emperor want with this cloning specifically? Yeah, I do think they're trying to make that connection, which I appreciate because at the moment it that those sequels happen kind of randomly, in my opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate even in this era, again, it also speaks to Palpatine's power. So I can reconcile, I think, with Rise of Skywalker, as frustrated as I can get about it, where it went narratively. If there is a reason, I do appreciate the cloning. What did you think of the Zillo Beast returning?
Oh well, I loved seeing it because that is actually one of my favorite. I think it was even. I don't think it was just one episode. I think it was an arc in the Clone Wars. The Zillo Beast arc
Yeah.
was one
Yeah.
of my favorites, and that is what made me like despise Palpatine. Like obviously he's a bad guy. You're kind of not supposed to like him, but I never really despised him until that moment because like the
Animal cruelty.
pretty much yeah, and like he's gonna torture that creature to get what he wants out of it essentially, and we kind of see the result of that in this season, which hurt me because obviously we know that that poor creature was abused. But I also like I have been thinking about it like on and off for years. Like I'm always like, oh, gonna have coffee for breakfast. What happened to Zillaby? Gonna have spaghetti for dinner.
Wow.
What happened to it? So it kind of offered me a little closure, which is really random. Like I'm probably the only person who was like happy to get that
Sort of, but
episode.
not. So, like he was sent back, or it was sent back to Mount Tantus, right? And that was kind of the last we saw of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's implied, but we don't actually know.
Yeah, we don't actually know what
So
happened. So
so have fun having spaghetti for dinner tonight and thinking about what happened to the Zillow Beast in the Bad Batch season 2. What happened to Zillow Jr.?
Zillo Jr. Well, obviously they're trying to create a weapon out of it. So will it come
Or at least
back?
armor, I think was the idea. Because it had nearly impenetrable skin.
Ugh, it makes me so sad to think about. Anyway, oh, real quickly before we move on from Tech, I wanted to discuss kind of what his death means for the rest of the batch, because I'd like to argue that Tech is the most necessary batcher. Whenever you want to hack into something, he's there. Power up, power down, he's there. Half of the things, half of the escapes they had, I don't think could have been done without Tech, unless you had one of those ports that Echo could like put his hand into.
Yeah.
So what do you think that's going to mean for the rest of the batch? Because I think they're going to have a
It's
really hard time.
yeah, it's gonna get real tough. It's gonna get really tough because he was a statistician, he was a strategist, he was a data analyst. Like he was so many different things. He could hack into systems and surveillance, and yeah. So I think they've got their work cut out for them.
I think it will give the batch a chance to kind of prove themselves more than they already have to be able to get out of these situations without help like that. So if we get some of those examples, I think that'll be in season 3. I think that'll be pretty cool.
Right now, we're sort of where we were in the mid-season of season 1 where Omega's gone.
Just captured again.
But the thing is, it's pretty much just, I know Echo's with them, but he's not like with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty much just Wrecker and Hunter.
Right, right. And who
Like,
knows if Crosshair will even join, after everything. So,
yeah, or if he can,
right,
whether he
right.
wants to or not, may not actually be the question. It's whether he can.
Hmm.
But like Echo, I feel, he left for a reason too.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think he'll be around for much longer, whether that
yeah,
be a death or just him leaving to go back with Rex.
I definitely kind of thought in the back of my mind that it was going to be Echo, but then they kind of just he left to go off with Rex instead. I'm like, oh, okay, okay, okay. Do we want to talk about the nasty green lizard in the room
Sid, the
briefly,
betrayer.
just so I don't get angry?
Yeah, we can talk
They're
about her.
screaming.
How she wasn't in half the season, then showed up as like an antagonist all of a sudden.
I have a couple issues narratively, but also like I am so mad. I hate her so much.
I know. The
I
fact
never liked her, and she just sealed her fate. Mm.
it's the fact that she called the Empire on them while they're still recovering from their injuries and therefore vulnerable for me. Like extra vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, it's also the fact that she called it the Empire, like you hypocrite. She was always like, you're gonna bring the Empire straight to us. Like you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you're gonna get yourselves killed, you're gonna get me killed and ruin my business and da 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 da. It's like, do you actually care? I don't think you do. So the fact that she calls the Empire, but like it ends up literally kind of blowing up in her face.
Yeah.
So now the Empire has actually officially completely occupied
Ord Mantell.
Ord Mantell. And whose fault is that? Not the bats.
Sid.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Lady,
Over
I hate you.
over some pettiness. She was real
Yeah.
petty.
And I think the other thing that sort of bothered me, other than me being angry with the character, the way that I'm supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that arc kind of took a little bit of a back seat. Do
Right.
you agree?
Yeah. Because they set it up and
Early.
I feel like they should have had a little bit more hints throughout the rest of the episodes before she was like, hey, by the way, this doesn't work out anymore. And then just like calls the Empire. Even if
Yeah.
she does feel a little bad, because they did kind of show that, but still.
And it was just kind of something that was a shadow in the background, but it wasn't enough to not
Makes sense.
feel, yeah, it felt kind of out of pocket.
I was hoping they're setting up a red herring during that pod racing episode where he was like, don't ever trust Sid. She'll like always double cross you.
Yeah.
Because it felt kind of red herring-ish, at least to me. Like I thought maybe it would be a situation where she would like be in the position to give them up, and for a second you think she will, but then at the end of the day, she would kind of like stand up for them, which obviously
Yeah.
didn't happen. But
Yeah.
that's a feeling I got when I
Or
watched
you
it.
have like a standoff. It's like, will she, won't she?
Yeah, yeah.
Then you have V, you have Warner Sykes' character. I also kind of thought that she would have something to do with that too. I'm glad that she kind of turned out to be
I
like
love
the
her.
I like how she actually turned out to be like the cool auntie
Hmm.
figure. Like
Right.
she was like actually morally good and was just kind of goofy.
Hmm.
Um, but I was hoping that because she knew Sid so well that, maybe she was able to sort of look at that and like let the Bad Batch know and be like, hey, just FYI, let's be careful. Cause like she's obviously very or she obviously can be very self-aware
Hmm.
and she can be very acutely aware of her surroundings.
Yeah, that's another thing I thought was kind of weird because they set her up to be like really close to Sid, like her best friend, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden she's like, "Yeah,
Come to
sometimes Sid's
Babu.
like that." Yeah, and I'm like, "So are you friends? Like, are how well do you know Sid actually?" Because I thought it was really well,
Yeah.
and also to be like, "Yeah, Sid sometimes is like that on the occasion," and I'm like, "Well." Okay.
Like, are you gonna portray them too, or are you gonna warn them?
Yeah.
Like, I expected more from you. Yeah, speaking of Pabu, what do you think about some of the quieter moments in this season? Like specifically for Omega.
I liked it a lot because season one was literally kind of her and the batch, who, even though they're genetically kind of very similar or the same, they're still older. Yeah, so I feel like she didn't get a chance to really be a kid because she is. She's
Yeah.
like 12 or 13 or something. Yeah, but I liked the quieter moments because with Gunji and even that like rascal from that one episode where they are in like this weird mining like colony,
Yeah.
just like to have her interact with people her own age, I think was really important for her because she also, I feel like, learned a lot from each of them individually. And also, of course, sets up what could have been. And they even did that in the finale where Hunter's like, maybe we should just like chill at Pabu for the rest of our lives. And so once that's taken away, it makes those future episodes where we did get those moments, I think, a little bit more tragic. Cause like she could have had this calm and normal life, and now she can't because the Empire has her.
I enjoy some of those episodes for what they are.
Mhm.
You know, and obviously I loved going back to Kashyyyk. I loved all the little Easter eggs from Republic Commandos, the praying mantises, and
Right.
I was able to appreciate the fact that they had a moment to slow down, as temporary as it was. And yeah, for Omega to just like interact and be a child and be able to be with other kids her age, other girls her age.
Right.
I
That's
think that
always
was I
important.
think that was also hugely important because most of the time, you know, the women that she surrounds herself with are tremendously older. Their mindsets are completely different.
Not
And then
always
when she
morally correct.
yeah, and then when she is around other kids, they're typically boys.
Mhm.
So to be able to be with another girl that is her age and just be a child for just a little bit, you know.
Right.
And I appreciate that so much for what it is.
Right. I do think that also gives her kind of like memories and future hopes to hold on to uh for through like whatever happens to her in Mount Tantus. Because they said they're not gonna hurt her, but you never know because Hemlock is a blah, 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 blah. And I also appreciate those quiet moments because it does show that the entire galaxy isn't always, in this constant state of strife and chaos and
It's not
pain.
always out to get you.
Yeah. And there are these places throughout there that are just peaceful and calm and beautiful. I feel like some people, when they think of Star Wars, they think of metal and like gray and draft and but there are places with, light and palm trees and water, calm water. So I feel like it's important to show the duality that the entirety of the galaxy has.
Also, speaking of Omega and Tantus,
In Tantus.
what are your thoughts about Omega having a sister?
I will say, I
I
didn't catch
don't
it
know
when
how
she
I
was
feel
like in
about it.
earlier episodes, but the minute she was like, "Well, you should trust me," I was like, they're gonna be related in some way, shape, or form. And she's like, "I'm your sister." I have problems with that because one, I'm under the impression they want Omega for a specific reason. Like they hinted at even in season one that there was something up with her and they like wanted to either keep that a secret or like exploit that. So to me, I'm like, if you already have her sister, why do you need Omega?
Exactly.
And two, when? Like just how? Why? Obviously, these questions will most likely be answered in season three. I understand that. But I'm just like, just that to me came out of left field. And
Yeah.
that's and something that I'm shocked at because I feel like the animated Star Wars media usually does plot twists very well, but this one just kind of felt
Out of pocket.
very out of left field. Yeah.
I haven't yet reconciled with it. I
They don't
think
even look alike.
some of it too is, well, I mean, sometimes when you have, you know, blonde hair, it goes away. And the clones, whoever they're based off of, you know, they're based off of Tim, who's darker skin. So
Yeah.
it's natural for that color of hair and like any like blue in the eyes to sort of go away.
Well, I think
Um,
Django's mother was blonde because the clones in the
mm,
universe are based off of Django. And I think his
mm,
either his mother or his sister or someone in his family was blonde. I think in like the
mm,
comics or the books or something. Don't remember
mm.
who it was though.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the timeline because like she's probably in her mid 20s, 30s. The Clone War lasted, I want to say it was somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
Right. And the Bad Batch is probably
And then the
within a
Bad Batch is
year.
almost immediately after. It's within a year or two after.
Yeah.
Um, and then Sifo Dyas and Count Dooku went to Camino 10 years before that. So the timeline sounds to me like it's somewhere around 15-ish
Yeah.
years.
She could also have
So
one of the
either
growth hormones though.
forgot about that. Never mind. Ramble over. You can cut that.
But it does just seem like weird. Like when in the timeline did they like make her? I guess.
Yeah, like have they been really doing this longer than they said? Because like the Kaminoans were known for cloning. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't just the Grand Army of the Republic. Like they had developed armies before. At least in Legends, I think a lot of their species, like they would it was kind of along the lines of almost like eugenics. Like they would clone each other
Hmm.
to create like the perfect Kaminoan, which
Isn't
is
that
kind of
isn't that how they
gross.
like had children too? Was like through cloning, or at least through some sort of like
Like
external.
embryo exchange and
Yeah.
and like egg freezing and stuff like that. There's all kinds of
Yeah.
science to it that I don't quite understand. I don't
I
know how I feel
think
about it.
I think I have to see what they're gonna do with it before I have like final thoughts on the matter. And how when did she come to Mount Tantus? Was it when they were like pilfering Camino? Was she there beforehand with Hemlock? What's up? And
Yeah,
why is she the one who's going to be interacting with Omega out of all the scientists that Mountain probably has?
yeah. Is she a red herring or is she actually misguided and evil?
Yeah. Or is she trying to is she like one of those like double agent kind of things? Like she might help Omega escape
Or is she
later.
like Pershing and she just wants to do science and she doesn't really care by the means? If it's through the Empire, it's through the Empire.
Hmm.
It could be that too.
So what do you think is going to happen in season 3? Just like vague. You have no idea?
I have no idea. Uh, I have a feeling that Hunter Echo and Wrecker are probably going to go to Rex. I would like to see Commander Wolf. I feel
Mm,
like we'll see Wolf. Yeah, what happened to Cody too? Yeah, so the other clones, Cody kind of showed up. I think he it was like a cameo.
yeah, for the
He was an
episode.
Easter egg, and then he just kind of went AWOL. And like I get it, it sort of makes sense, but like for a character like that people really wanted to see, like people when we went to Celebration, people went nuts.
Right.
Yeah, I'm hoping you get a little bit more of that clone resistance. As we know from Rebels, it's Rex, it's Gregor, and it's Wolf. So he has to show up at some point.
Right, right. Yeah. Even though that's like
Although
far in the future.
Yeah, although just thinking about that, just keep in mind there are certain things that we know, certain people we know made it out. So it's
Right.
just like be prepared.
Yeah. I in season 3, obviously I'm hoping to find out more information on why Omega is so special and what the Emperor, like a confirmation of what the Emperor would like us to do. Although I have a feeling the Mandalorian might pick that up because that was also mentioned in season 1 and it's season 3 and we haven't really talked about it since in that show. So we'll see what happens with that. Crosshair, if he gets a redemption arc, he might not either, which is fine for me. I don't know if
If he has a
Echo.
redemption action, I'm at peace with it.
That's fair.
Like if he ends up saving Omega again and sacrificing himself for Omega again, like I'm okay with that. And if that's it,
then
If
that's
it's
it.
just like
I
minimum
don't
payment.
know. I don't know if Echo or Wrecker will make it.
I didn't think Wrecker was gonna make it out of season 1, to be
That's
honest.
that's
I
fair.
I thought that whole episode where they went to Braca and they started taking their chips out, I didn't think he was gonna make it. Yeah, I'm not sure what to expect.
I don't know either. I didn't even know what to expect for this finale either. Like I had no idea how it was going to end or anything. So yeah. So, but I'm excited, and it'll probably be announced hopefully, or something will be announced at the Star Wars Celebration, whether whatever season 3 may hold. Well, do you have any final thoughts? I think I've said all I needed to or wanted to.
No, not really.
Well, guys, that was our discussion on season 2 of The Bad Batch. Connor, thank you for joining me as always. Leave a like on the video, comment what did you think of the season and what do you think will happen next season, if and when we get it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future Star Wars reaction videos as well as Star Wars discussion videos. But guys, that's all I got for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.